Okay. Welcome to Motivational Monday, where we draw inspiration from individuals who have navigated the challenges of autism with resilience and determination. Today, we are honored to introduce Kristi Jacobsen, also known as Rain Mom, a dedicated parent, educator, and advocate in the autism community. Kristi's journey began over 25 years ago when her son was diagnosed with autism. Today, they embarked on a journey of understanding and support, learning to navigate behaviors as her son's primary form of communication. This experience propelled Kristi into a career as a behavior support interventionist, where she has worked to support a diverse student population with a wide variety of behavior needs. Her dedication to advocacy is further demonstrated through her blog Rain Mom, where she shares her journey, inspiring countless individuals in the autism community. Today, Christy will share her insights on understanding behaviors and responsive strategies. Through her wealth of experience and compassionate approach, she will offer valuable strategies for understanding and responding to behaviors in individuals with autism. Join us as we embark on this empowering journey with Kristi Jacobsen and discover the power of understanding and responsive strategies in supporting individuals on the autism spectrum. So thank you so much, Christy, for joining us today and taking such an amazing topic. So now over to you for the continuation.
Thank you so much. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I want to begin by thanking Autism Connect for inviting me to be a part of this Motivational Monday. And what can be more motivational than behaviors, right? But honestly, I'm very honored to be here with you to share my experiences over the past many years with challenging behaviors, not only those with my son, but those with my students with ASD and emotional and behavioral needs as well. Behaviors can be motivated and influenced by many factors. So it's my hope that by providing this information to you today, it will enhance your understanding and recognition of some of the common functions of behaviors. And then it will give you some tools and strategies to help you diminish some of those behaviors as you shape them into more positive and desired outcomes. So let's start with the basics. What is behavior? Behavior is a response by a person to an individual stimulus or opportunity. I apologize, my slideshow is not moving. Hang on 1 second here. There we go. By definition, behavior is the way a person acts or reacts to a particular situation or stimulus. And behaviors vary, and not all behaviors are negative. It's really important that when you're dealing with behaviors, children, students, loved ones, that you look at the positive, reinforce that positive whenever and wherever you can. A child doesn't know what you expect from them if you're only responding to negative behaviors. Sometimes the behavior can be misunderstood or overlooked. For example, sensory can often be misunderstood as just an outright behavior, or not meeting a basic need can be overlooked. And then there are also the physical demands of physical aggression and self-injurious behavior as another form of behavior. Behavior is often a very clear form of communication. I have said this more times than I can remember. It's not personal. It is a way to communicate with you. But it does require us to kind of look past the obvious and remember the individual on the other end. And there is a big difference between meeting a need and feeding a behavior, which is something I would like to share with you. It was probably my first, and Jonathan and I, our first behavioral experience together. But before I share that story with you, a little background. My son, Jonathan, was not only diagnosed with autism, he was also diagnosed with an intellectual disability, and he has minimal verbal expression. What I mean by that is most of his language is wants and needs. So when something is upsetting him or scaring him, he's not able to articulate what he's thinking or feeling, and it often comes out in the form of a behavior. So getting back to meeting that need and feeding that behavior. Our story started at the grocery store. I'm sure all of us have had this experience at one time or another. Going to the checkout lane with the rows and rows of candy and treats. And like any other parent, a lot of us, I succumbed to it. And I started rewarding him because he was doing a great job until that behavior started to grow and get out of control to the point where when he didn't get exactly what he wanted or wanted more and more, the behavior would escalate to the point that one day we were in a store and I had decided enough was enough. So as we went to check out, I looked at my son and I said, "No, Jonathan, not today." And he began to escalate. Again, I said, "No, Jonathan, not today." And he went into a full blown meltdown in front of everyone. We were quite the spectacle. I had a momentary panic and I just unbuckled him from the grocery cart and looked at the cashier, apologized, said I couldn't check out, and proceeded to march him out the door. He was screaming and yelling the entire way out, all the way to the car. And when I buckled him in the car seat, I looked at him and I said, "Jonathan, when you act like that, you get nothing." We went home. It was quite the experience. And I sat there and reflected on what had just happened. And then it dawned on me, yes, I stopped the behavior I was feeding, but I had given him no warning, no direction, no guidance whatsoever. I just slammed on the brakes. So the next week I went back with a different plan. And as he and I went shopping down certain aisles, I gave him choices. "Jonathan, Chex or Cheerios, pretzels or goldfish." I empowered him to make some choices. So when we went to the checkout line, we were both feeling pretty good. I thought things were going to go well. No. Again, he pointed to the candy. I said, "No, Jonathan, not today." He started to vocally escalate. He got louder and louder. And then I remembered, what had I said to him? And I looked at the 3 items that were sitting next to him that he had picked. And I took those 3 items and I looked at him and I said, "When you act like this, you get nothing." And I put them aside. Now, he did ramp up, but interestingly enough, as I continued to check out, I think he started to make a connection that his behavior was preventing him from getting what he wanted. So enter the next week. We go shopping, and this time I added praise. I praised him for his choices. I praised him for his behavior. We got to the checkout line, and he started to point at the candy, and then he looked at me, and then he put his finger down, and then he started to go like he was going to vocalize, and I just set my hand on one of the items he had chosen, and he stopped. And in that moment, I praised him. And I told him what a great job shopping he had done. I asked him if he was ready to check out. He smiled. We handed the items over. We packed it all up, and he walked out, and I walked out with groceries in hands and a much more positive experience than the one we had had in the past. So, what is behavior? That behavior was pretty obvious, right? But some aren't. And there's always a function to behavior. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this acronym, but it goes by SEAT. And it's my opinion, the 4 cornerstones of the most commonly seen behaviors. It includes sensory, escape, attention, and intangible. Let's start with sensory. For our kids with ASD, this is usually one of the most visible ones that we see. Vision, visually overwhelmed, squinting, covering the eyes. Auditory, volume is a huge issue with our students and our children with ASD. Hands over the ears is usually the first sign. For my son, raised voices, little dogs yapping, babies crying, all sounds that he finds very intolerable. Tactile was another issue that my son suffered from. Texture. I had to cut all the tags out of his shirts. Now he's actually outgrown that. But in that time period, it was something that was intolerable to him. Also, wet, dry. He could go swimming, he could shower, but if water or something spilled on his clothes, it would send him off. And then physical touch. My son, we can hug him. He will embrace us. He doesn't like light touch. But I find with my students in particular, I have some that they will touch you, but they don't like to be touched. And you can tell they'll recoil from you when you do. Other sensory would include taste and smell. Don't discount these as well, because an offensive taste or smell can also be a precursor to a behavior. Escape. This is often a form of avoidance, I usually call it the fight or flight response. You probably hear that very often. It's often the result of a demand that has been placed on them or a situation that they do not want to be involved in. It can also be a precursor to attention seeking or tangible. I found that with my son. He started eloping when he was young, and typically it was in response to a tangible. He eloped to the playground. He ran down the street because they were doing construction. He loved construction trucks. We were at a hotel. He eloped to the vending machine, candy, yes. It can also be in response to attention seeking, which is if you take off, people have to come after you. And it can also be a sensory issue. If you're in a room you're visually overwhelmed, or your auditory, your processing is so overwhelmed, you need to escape, that's also a function. Attention. Attention-seeking behaviors can be seemingly obvious, but there can be a lot of different reasons behind them. It's interesting. I work with a lot of students. One of the most common attention-seeking things I see is they'll start tapping on their desk, switching around their chair. They're doing things and you're thinking, what's going on? Instead of just simply raising their hand. And I go over, and sometimes it's because they're in need of assistance. Other times, it's to access a person. If you ask any teacher, every single one will tell you there's usually a child in their class who demands their attention all of the time. And that could be in response to the fact that maybe they are an only sibling and they're not used to having their attention divided among 25 other kids. It can also sometimes present itself as a form of control. And typically for me, the way that I will address attention is two different ways. One, I extinct it, because the more attention you give to attention, the worse it gets. It can be a little tricky, but I find more often than not, when you just extinct that behavior, they tend to start to recognize, and you're praising the positive, they get it, that pivot praise. I don't know how many are familiar with that, but it can be where a child is bouncing in his seat or not doing what he's supposed to be doing or walking around the room. I go around and I praise the children who are doing the preferred behavior, the positive behavior. And often that is rewarding enough to get that child to course correct and then join in. And the minute they do, I praise them. Tangible. This is usually access to a desired item. It can be a toy, a food item. For a lot of my students, they like access to the computer, music, iPad. So when you're looking at these four functions, and I want you to think of something, it may not just be one. It could be a couple. You could be escaping to get to a tangible, like my son did. You could be escaping because your sensory is overloaded. Or you could be escaping as a form of attention. Sometimes it's awful. And my son did that on one occasion. He was in school, 3rd grade, decided he didn't like certain parts of school. And what did he do? He would wet himself. Now, as I mentioned earlier, he hated having wet clothing. So the minute he did that, he would vocally start to escalate. It would cause a disruption. He would be removed from the classroom. He'd be taken with a change of clothes to the nurse, a person he loved, where he got attention. And sometimes even got a little treat. And then he'd come back to class. So he escaped, he got attention, and he got a tangible using sensory. Well, this was becoming very disruptive. And when school contacted me, I immediately recognized what the issue was. And I told them, you're going to have to extinct it. You're going to have to shut it down because he is now in charge. It was not well received. Thankfully, 2 of the teachers that work with my son were on board. And 4 days later, he did the same thing in the PE teacher's class. The PE teacher extincted him, ignored his behavior. He yelled. Thankfully, they were in the gym. It didn't really matter because all the kids were yelling around and screaming. So it didn't really make that much impact on anyone else. And it really wasn't that disruptive. So he sat there in that wet. And the PE teacher told me halfway through the class, you could see him rethinking his choice. Then class ended. He asked him to line up. And when he lined up, his para came in and she had a change of clothes. She said he looked very relieved. Like, okay, well, at least I'm going to get something. He turned to go right to the nurse. She directed him left, took him to the boys' bathroom, handed him his clothes, and with minimal language just said, go change. When he changed, she took him back to the classroom. In that moment, he put together the fact that what he had done was not going to work. And The acts, the escape, the attention, the tangible were no longer that important to him because that sensory was way too overwhelming. And he was no longer going to get all of the desired outcomes he was looking for. So, what are the elements for effective behavior response? My personal opinion is there are 4 very important ones. They're your voice, body language, proactive intervention, and supports and natural consequences. Voice. I think this one probably is very underestimated. Your voice is your calling card. What do you want it to say? Are you calm and in control? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Let me give you an example. Go make your bed. Go make your bed. Go make your bed. Which one of those would you respond to in a positive manner? And which one would cause you to escalate? The way you say it, your voice, has a lot of power. I have had children screaming in my face, literally. My response is to whisper. They're yelling, I whisper. You'd be amazed at how they respond to that. They'll be, I got it, and they kind of like, and they realize that their voice is way off from where mine is. And they start to come back. Voice is powerful. Your voice has the power to de-escalate, and your voice also has the power to escalate a behavior. Next would be impeccable with your words. When you're talking, say what you mean what you say. If you promise something, if you say something's going to happen, honor it. Don't change it up. Don't mix it up, especially for ASD kids. They're so used to the structure and routine. I have had students go, but she said we were going to, and you're right, and it didn't happen. And it flusters them, and it can lead to a behavior. The other part about your voice is knowing when not to use it. And I think there are 2 very important times. One is attention seeking. If I'm trying to get your attention, I'm engaging. Hey, do you see this? What do you like? No, I'm not going to give it to you. Another, even more important time is when you have an individual who is highly escalated and verbally combative. They're trying to engage you. They want you to argue. They want to see you get flustered. They want you to come in with them. Don't give it to them. Doesn't matter what they're saying to you. They can be saying anything. And yes, I know you can be thinking it's disrespectful, it's rude. Fine. Don't respond. If you ask them to take a seat, you don't have to keep saying, take a seat, take a seat. You can gesture. You can also say, when you're ready. And that's it. Because it's really hard to argue with someone who's not arguing back with you. Body language. Another one that seems pretty obvious, right? But you'd be amazed at how many times the body language might be contradicting you. For example, if you're being calm with your voice, but your hands are on your hips, your arms are folded, you don't seem really approachable. You seem defensive. Kids will pick up on that. Are you relaxed? Are you inviting? Are you leaning forward when you're talking to them? Or do you seem distant? Proximity and position also. Don't get too close. Don't be too far away. If they're sitting, are you towering over them? Are you at eye level? I have students of lots of variety of ages. So when I'm having a conversation with them, I'm going to get in their eye level and talk to them. If they're sitting, I sit. If they're standing, I stand. I had a really interesting behavior call many years ago. 5th grade girl. I'd never met her. When I got there, she was in a heated argument with a substitute. And when I approached and chatted with the substitute briefly and excused her back into the classroom so I could handle what was going on, her first words to me were, if you touch me, I will slap you. To which I responded, I wasn't planning on it. Thanks for the heads up. And I sat down. She immediately, just her whole body posture relaxed. And then she looked at me and she said, do you want to know why I'm upset? And I said, yes, that's why I'm here. And then she sat down next to me and we had a conversation. If I'd gone toe to toe with her, we would have gotten nowhere. My body language and my voice told her, I'm not a threat and I'm not going to confront you. Facial expression is another one. Sometimes we overlook that. Kids pick up on it when you roll your eyes or you make a look on your face that doesn't necessarily coincide with what you say. So be aware of that. You can look angry and not realize it. Funny story. One of my kids one day looked at me and she said, Miss Kristi, are you mad? And I go, no. Why? She goes, you look like you are. And I looked at her and I go, oh, you know what? I was just thinking about something. I go, but when I do that, I look angry. She goes, yeah, you do sometimes. So to this day, if I get that look on my face, she will say, are you thinking? I go, yeah, I'm thinking. Mirror. What I mean by that is what you want them to feel and reflect is how you are. So if your voice is agitated or you're frustrated, if your body posture is defensive, they're going to pick up on that. The more relaxed and in control you are, the more relaxed and control they will be because they take their cues from you. And remember, your body language communicates just as much as your voice. And those two are a big part of how you de-escalate the behavior. Proactive responses. This is probably one of my go-tos. I love to be proactive and stop a behavior before it starts. But you need to recognize the signs. For my son, it can be a grimaced look on his face. He'll clench his jaw. Sometimes he will tongue thrust. I have students, one of the first things that I will see with a student, they put their head down. I know something's going on. Their shoulders might hunch up. Their fists might tighten. Pay attention to those. Now, some really common examples of proactive strategies would be basic needs. I feel like this one gets overlooked a lot. I had a student just 2 weeks ago, completely escalated because he didn't have breakfast. Basic need, he was hungry. They could be tired. They could be getting sick. We need to pay attention to these. Prevent defense for known triggers. If you know what triggers your child, prepare for it ahead of time. Like I said, Jonathan has a lot of issue with auditory. So when we go on an airplane, his Bose noise canceling headphones go everywhere with us as prevent defense. Foreshadowing a new routine or a change in routine is a huge proactive response. Do that, especially for our kids who crave routine and structure. If you don't, you pull the rug out under them. Kind of like I did to Jonathan at the grocery store. He never saw it coming. And I had a student years ago who I had known since he was in 4K. And subs were always a bone of contention with him. And I understood it because it rocked his routine. One day when I got called for him, there was another sub issue. And we sat down and started talking. And I said, you know what? What if we make a sub plan for you? And he just looked at me. I go, well, the teacher gets sub plans from the teacher. Why not make your own? So that we have a structure and a plan for when there's a sub. And we did. We put together a plan where if there was a sub, I would come and let him know first thing in the morning. Usually met with, oh, great. But I would tell him, we have a plan. There was a part of the day where I would go in and help him with language arts. He had a break pass, and he could do his math in an alternate environment. Win-win. From that day on, we had very little trouble or behaviors from him when there was a sub. And in fact, he took that sub plan with him to middle school. Limit junk behaviors. So many junk behaviors are just a form of testing. What are you going to do about it? If you do nothing, it kind of shuts it down often. And you'll know if it's not a junk behavior, it's going to really start to ramp up. Although even the attention piece can. If you extinct it, that is usually the most effective response I generally find. And again, praising those around doing the right thing. Kids love praise. They crave it. They want it. But it has to be healthy praise. And it has to be in conjunction with them exhibiting the behaviors we want from them. And also, not all behaviors require an immediate response. What do I mean by that? We'll pay close attention and look at the function. So I have some friends that are a little slow to start when they're doing work in the classroom. Or my son, sometimes it's a processing. I wait to see, are they understanding what I asked of them? Are they able to do the task? And are we starting to get frustrated? I did have a student get very frustrated one time because a well-intentioned adult kept saying, do you need help? Do you need help? Do you need help? And he started to get frustrated and escalate because he knew what to do. It just was, he had to do it at his own pace. So that's why I'm saying, if you start to see something, just wait and see if it's something they can work through on their own, which empowers them, or do they need help? Then by all means, come in and offer it. Supports and natural consequences. Supports are an important part for our ASD kids. Daily schedules, routines, chore lists, incentives, all are very beneficial and very helpful. So I do recommend that you use those where and when you can to be supportive. Same with incentives. They're a great way to empower people to move to the positive behaviors. Now, some other supports might be things like a reduced work demand. Some of my kids are visually overwhelmed, and so sometimes we'll chunk the work or we'll cut it back. Choices. Here's another one. Choices, choices, choices. Give a child some sense of control. Would you like the blue pencil or the red? Would you like to sit at your desk or at the back table? Would you like a juice box or a water bottle? Do you want the basketball or the volleyball? Choice. Another one would be timers. I find timers are very beneficial for our ASD kids because those transitions can get a little tricky. And sometimes a transition is where I lose a child and the behavior starts to set in. They don't like that abrupt stop to something, or they are right in the middle of something, and we all know they want to get it done. They're not thinking, I'm going on to the next thing. They're thinking, this is in front of me. I need to get this done now. And if you don't let me, I'm going to lose it. So the timer helps often. 5 minutes till we go to the break. In 5 minutes, we're going to recess. Breaks are also another great support. Some kids need them, some kids don't. Some kids need reminders. We have little break signs on all of our kids' desks. And sometimes if I think they need one, I won't ask necessarily, do you need a break? I simply might tap on their side. Sometimes they do this. Sometimes they do this. Go right ahead. Fidgets. Okay, fidgets, I have my opinion on. I think they are great at helping calm, stay focused, and on task. However, if they become a distraction or a toy, they're no longer an effective tool. And that is how I present them to most of my students. Also, another thing is alternative seating or placement. Sometimes just moving them somewhere else around the room is helpful. I also use first, then a lot. First art, then lunch. First this, then that. It just kind of gives them a routine in the day. And again, praise. Praise is powerful. Praise is empowering, and praise tells them you are doing a great job. I want to see more of this. Allow for natural consequences for unwanted behaviors like work refusal, defiance, not following directions, and unsafe behavior. There are consequences in life, and there is no getting around it. If I speak, I get a tick. If you refuse to do your work, then you won't be going to recess or the next activity. You'll need to finish it, or it goes home as homework. There's always a consequence for a behavior, but it doesn't have to be extreme. And you can give that consequence in a way that the child understands. My own son himself, when he has been consequenced, usually in response to an unwanted behavior, for the most part, I think it's a piece that he gets. He understands it. What I see with children who don't have natural consequences is they think there's never a consequence for anything, which is concerning. The other piece is when you are using a consequence, be sure it's something you're going to follow through on. Don't say, if you don't finish your work, you won't go out for recess, and then let them go out for recess, because guess what? That was not a consequence. I had a parent one time, her son was struggling and she was getting really frustrated and he was having some behaviors. And one day she looked at me and she said, well, if he does that again, I am canceling his birthday party. I said, oh, when is that? She goes, Saturday. This was Thursday. Guess what? He did it again. When I saw the student on Monday, he came in. I said, hey, how was your weekend? He was great. I had my birthday party. I go, oh, I thought you weren't going to have that. Yeah. Well, my mom had already invited everybody. So, but at the end of the night, she just told me I couldn't have my iPad. But I didn't really care because I was tired and I went to sleep. So what I tell people is the consequence needs to fit, but you also have to make sure that you instill the consequence. Otherwise, it does you no good. And also always gain a form of compliance to reduce behaviors. If I elope to get out of doing math and I never have to go back to math, I am going to keep eloping every single time. When I get you calm and when I get you back in, we'll do math. I may reduce the workload, as I said earlier, but you will go back and give me compliance on what you tried to avoid. Building your behavior toolbox. Everybody's is going to look a little different, but mine pretty much looks like this. Be positive. I can't emphasize that enough. The more you praise, the more positive you are consistently, the more you're going to see those behaviors that you want. Be patient and be consistent. Shaping behaviors is for a lifetime. I mean, I think about my son in that grocery store. He turns 29 next week. What if I had never addressed that behavior and shaped it? Would I now have a 29-year-old son throwing a meltdown in the grocery store because he doesn't get candy at the checkout? Behaviors are for a lifetime, and when you're shaping them, remember and be mindful of that. Empower with choices, ownership, accountability. Again, I'm a huge proponent of choices. Choices really do empower. Allow children to take ownership. Let them take charge of the things that they can. And accountability where necessary. Keep negative emotions out of the behavior. I know it can be really challenging. I have been there and done that so many times. It can feel so personal. It really can. But you have to remember, most communication, or most behaviors, are a form of communication. Try to remember that wherever and whenever you can. My toolbox favorites are obviously praise, 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 praise. Proactive strategies. Get in and shut it down where and when you can, or prevent it in the first place. Extinction. I do like extinction. I find it can be very, very effective. And then de-escalation, which is your voice and your body more often. And then I also like to do something called the flip. This probably sounds weird. It's not a professional term at all. Some people might look at it as a redirect, but I call it the flip. The flip is when you come back with something that the person never anticipated. I'll give you an example. Back several years ago, I had a friend in third grade. When he would get highly agitated and angry, he would yell, curse, swear. It was very disruptive in an elementary school, as you can well imagine, and it was very upsetting to people. I got the behavior call. I'm walking down the hall, and my gut says, don't confront. Because I knew if I walked up to him, it was just going to get worse. So what did I do? I walked right past him into the library. He's swearing at me, right? Never made eye contact, kept going. The yelling stops, but I can still hear him mumbling, talking under his breath. I come out of the library, excuse me, I head down to the gym. Now he's looking good. What is this? A few minutes later, I come back. As I round the corner, there's an art case, and the art teacher always would put new displays in, and she happened to put a new display in. So I stop. I'm admiring it, looking at it. Now keep in mind, he's about 7 feet away on my left. He's not saying a word now, he's just watching me. And then I notice to the left of the art are reports that his class has done. And as I'm looking at them, one of them catches my eye. It was about weather anomalies. Volcanoes and tornadoes in the same place. What? I've never heard of that. And then he said, That one is mine. There was my invitation. I sighed to her. I turned to him. I go, really? How did you find this information? He starts to talk to me about it. And then when he finishes, he looks at me and he says, you got called for me, didn't you? I said, yes, I did. But I didn't think you were ready. So I was just waiting until you were. We had a great conversation. We talked about some strategies. We talked about some things that we could do to support him. Did it immediately go away? No. But guess what? Eventually, it fizzled away and died out. And he found ways to cope and to use other strategies down the road. And the flip doesn't have to be something great or grand. I do this often. A kid can start to escalate. I'll go, are those new shoes? Did you get your hair cut? Whoa, is it a pink flamingo? Where are my glasses? They love that one. Miss Kristi, they're on you. I'm having a day. It can just be something that simple to flip them. So I love to use that one as well. Learn from every behavior experience. And this is something that you will. I am learning. I continue to learn. It helps you to hone your skills. It enhances your abilities and your own confidence. Embrace any and all experiences, even some of your greatest challenges. What I like to call flops, things that maybe didn't go well, those were some of the most empowering and insightful experiences down the road because I recognized and learned from them. Take time to reflect and examine. I like to do this a lot. I like to reflect, kind of like I told you, Jonathan, in the grocery store, something like what worked, what didn't work. What should I do different? What would I do differently next time? These help you, prepare you for that next behavior. And then, as I always say, go with your gut and your heart. We are parents, we are educators, we care deeply about these children. It is going to come from a place of love and instinct. Remember that. And as always, I am a big, big proponent of collaboration. I love the collaborative process. I love when we get together, we support and inspire each other. And to that end, I invite you to reach out to me whenever you wish. I have my website, Rain Mom, or you can also join me on my Facebook group of the same name, Rain Mom. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. When you encounter that next behavior, don't think of it as misbehaving. Instead, I'd like you to think, what is it communicating? Thank you.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The session was quite amazing, but as of now, we do not have any questions on the live stream. So I would request the audiences, in case if they have any questions, they can just drop it down in the comments box below, and we'll
Okay.
be happy to connect back to Kristi for all of that. In case, if not, then you can directly get in touch with her through her Facebook group, Rain Mom. So that is the best way people can reach out to you. Also, as we are concluding today's Motivational Monday session, I hope everyone has been uplifted by the inspiring journey of yours. And thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom with us. And thank you everyone who joined today in this empowering discussion. Until our next Motivational Monday, may we continue to draw inspiration from each other and navigate life journeys together. So take care, and until next time, we'll be having Kristi again maybe in future, where we'll be doing more such collaborations on our Facebook Live sessions. So thank you so much, Kristi, once again, and I hope you really loved doing this session with all our audiences.
I certainly did. Thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you so much once again. So, okay then, bye bye. Have a
Bye-bye.
nice day.
Thank you. You too.